In today's demonstration, we are going to be running a workflow within the MDM environment to check out, make updates to certain categories, and then check in that data so all of the different users at the mine site can always see the latest information in one central location. What you are looking at here within the MDM environment is the MDM client application, specifically in the workflow tab area here. So these are currently all of the live tasks that are being worked on from the different users at the mine site. And my area of interest now is I want to go ahead and make updates to data that's living within the MDM. To do so, we can use something called workflows. So a workflow specifically gets set up for a task of interest to be completed. These workflows can be created for any types of tasks that your site is currently completing. And for example, here I can see there's drill and blast, life of mine, survey designs, geology, geotech, infrastructure, ventilation. How this gets set up within an environment is a user will be assigned a certain role or a certain department, and then they will only see their workflows of interest displaying. In my example, I can see all the workflows at this mine site, but maybe in this example here, I will be part of the ventilation team. I just went underground and did some vent surveys, and now I want to go ahead and make some updates within the MDM environment. So I'm going to go into Vent Items Update Workflow here, and I'll click Start. When I click Start, a new task will populate within my window here. And this task here can actually be assigned to a user of interest. If I did go ahead and assign this task, they would receive an email noting that a task has been assigned to them. In my example, I'm just going to go ahead and start this task on my own, so I will click that window here. Now this workflow has been set up at this site specifically to bring in certain data that is write access and certain data that is read-only reference access area here. So every workflow itself can be customized to what the site-specific needs are. And in my example here, I have the opportunity to check out by attributes. And this is going to be a little bit different than the traditional approach. Previously, before, many users are used to using a file level approach where every level is held into a different file, or even a master file approach where all of the levels are located within one file. And unfortunately, within these different approaches, a lot of work is required if you're doing one level at a time, or unfortunately a file can become slow and clunky if all of the levels are located within one file. So the MDM provides flexibility to choose that area of interest that the end user wants to update. So in this example here, maybe I went to multiple different levels and I need to make updates to them. So let's say we went to the 350, 375 level and the 390 level. I didn't go to every single level in the mine, and I didn't just go to one level of interest. I've gone to 3 in this example. So now I can click out of this window and click check out. At this point right now, it's going to start building me a brand new file by using the data that lives within the MDM system. So it's going to take this information from the level attributes 350, 375, and 390, and Deswik CAD will now open, but it's going to be looking specifically at those attributes and placing read-only reference data from these different categories, and then write access design data within these specific levels categories. And as we can see here, this is what the Deswik CAD looks like. This Deswik CAD contains a template from the workflow, so every single workflow itself can contain a different template, and really the goal here is to set the user up for success with using standards to complete that task of interest. So maybe some standards might be certain colors that are required for these entities, maybe different plot layout standards within the different vent plans that are to be required to be completed. And then on the right hand side of this workflow, we can see here is something called a process map. And the goal of the process map is to complete repetitive tasks efficiently. So going ahead and making this a lot easier for the end user to complete their desired goal. These process maps are also set up within the workflow, so automatically when somebody checks out and starts their drawing, they will always have the latest template and the latest process map of interest. So in my example earlier, I mentioned that we checked out 3 different levels. So specifically here, this can get a little bit clunky or noisy, I should say, by looking at all these different levels. We might just want to be working on one vent survey at a time. So to do so, I can go ahead and click drawing information, and I can choose from my drop-down list the area of interest that I want to be updating. Let's go ahead and choose 375 and hit OK. At this point now, it's just going to go ahead and reference me into the 375 area. I'm just going to click select working plane, and this button here is just going to go ahead and place the appropriate Z elevation. And I'll just continue here and add some fresh airflows. So I'm going to go ahead and just draw these arrows here and displaying that there is some fresh air running in this direction. Let's say we've gone ahead and we've completed the 375 level. We want to quickly jump to the 350 level. We can go ahead and find that from the drop-down list and hit OK. At this point now, I can see that we can see the 350 level. I'm going to go ahead here and just hit that select working plane. Let's say there's an exhaust raise within this location here. So I'm just going to go to return airflow. I'm just going to go ahead and add a couple arrows here to this vent area of interest. As I mentioned earlier, there are these plot layouts. This is just an example one that can be set up within your mine site specifics. At this point now, I've completed my drawing. I can hit clear filters and I can see all the different data from the multiple different levels. And there's really only one last step to do to get this data back into the MDM system, and that is to validate. So this site specifically have a few mandatory attributes. One being very important, being level. The site is going ahead and always filtering by different levels of interest. And so before checking this information in, they are required to validate this to ensure that these attributes conform to the site specific standards. And to do so, we're going to go ahead and click on one of these airflows that we added and remove the level. So these levels got added automatically with the process map. So I'm going to go ahead and remove that level 350. So now I have on my screen here a bunch of different vent information that's been updated. I have to validate this data using the MDM plugin. So I'll go ahead and click validate, and I have an error. And maybe the question here is, where is that ventilation item of interest? It's telling me I have one incorrect. I'm missing an attribute called level. If I click on it, it's going to actually zoom me right into that area. And it's going to give me the opportunity to place that appropriate level of interest here. At this point now, I can hit the validate button a second time and notice I have validation successful. This met the site-specific requirements. Every site might be slightly differently, and that's one of the best things about the MDM configuration is that this can be designed extremely customized to what your site specifics are. So when I am done with this, I can hit the save button. I'm going to now close down Deswik CAD, and I'm going to hit the check-in button. At this point now, it now brings this data into this MDM in-queue system. So what you are looking at is it has not been committed yet into the category. This is now leaving it in a page right now. So let's say my back-to-back team member who maybe works 1 week on and 1 week off has now come back to the mine site and they need to continue working on this vent survey. That's no problem. They can hit checkout exactly where I left off previously before and continue that drawing. Now to commit this data back into the MDM, we'll have to hit update task, and I can go ahead here and say 350 and 375 vent update. And I'll hit task is complete, and I can hit update area here. And at this point now, this data has been merged and pushed into the appropriate MDM categories. And to look at this, I will use the preview screen that's located within the MDM area here. And I will use this views tab. And what this views tab is going to do here is when I click 375, it's going to go ahead and automatically turn on the appropriate categories of interest. So it's going to bring on the right categories and bring in the ventilation information. So if I go ahead now and zoom into this file, or this preview screen of interest, I can see these new vent airflows. If I click on this one and I go to my attribute properties, I can see I have a level 375, and then I have the vent type equals to fresh airflow. If I click on a different one here, we'll have a different vent type. These attributes are all customly created for the site-specific needs. A few of these attributes that are not customly created and they'll always be within the MDM is something called the MDM system attributes. So this will say the user that's placed this entity within the MDM, what day and time that it's been updated within the MDM, and what workflow was used to go ahead and complete this data into the MDM system. So this is going to complete our demonstration of checking out and checking in and running our first workflow using the MDM. In the next video, I'm going to go ahead and create a workflow that uses multiple stages and also an electronic approval sign-off process.